Welcome to Passionate and Practical, the art of dreaming, doing, and serving. I am with Blake with the Crappy Christian podcast, and I am geeking out because I think we just became best friends. She is an 8-wing 7, which I am too on the Enneagram. Her name is Blake. My husband's name is Blake. I'm having a baby girl named Blake in June. There's just all these crazy connections. She loves Jesus. She loves the Enneagram. She loves podcasting. And one of my favorite things that I learned about her is that she's an anti-hustler. So I think in the world that says, man, I've got to get it for myself and I have to be self-made, Blake says, no, Jesus has done it, and we are stepping into our faith, and we're going to be all that we can be, but we don't have to hustle. And I love that about her. So, Blake, welcome to the show.
Yay, that was the nicest intro ever.
And by the way, everyone, I've been binge listening to her podcast, and I was telling her, as a communicator, it is very hard for me to get into podcasts because sometimes I judge the way that they do things and the way they ask questions. And I have listened to almost all your podcasts, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. So thanks so much. So first things first, what are you passionate about?
Ooh, I am passionate about women knowing who they are, whose they are, what their giftings are, and not apologizing for being good at stuff. I feel like that's like a very small picture into like what I'm passionate about because I'm an 8-wing 7. So like the real answer is everything.
Yes, truly. And anyone who has been following along knows that that answer is exactly what landed you on the show, because I'm also passionate about women knowing their worth, knowing whose they are, and putting their identity in the real thing, which is Jesus. And yes. So tell us more about you. You're an 8-wing 7, and what does that mean? And how do you see that playing out in your life?
Yeah, so I am married to Jeremy. I have 2 little girls who are 4.5 and 2, and I have a podcast. I also have a graphic design business, so I wear a lot of hats. And I really think that being an 8-wing 7 has a lot to do with that because I feel capable and strong, and I've learned the hard way what it looks like to function out of my own abilities instead of what Christ has made me and gifted me to be. And so I love being an 8. You and I just talked about this earlier. Like, I love being an 8. I'm done, like, trying to make myself smaller to kind of fit in some weird box that I think I need to fit in. But I'm also constantly in process and sanctification. I really think 8s need the most sanctification of all of the types. We need the most pruning, and sometimes that's painful, but it's so good. And so I'm really just in this season of pursuing the next right step that God's putting in front of me and saying yes to the things that I feel like are mine and no to the things that aren't, and just kind of like letting Him take the lead, but doing the hard work that it requires to get there.
I love it. And I think that 8s are natural born leaders, and they're usually bold and outspoken. And then 7s are kind of adventurous. So mixing leader with adventurous and driven, there's kind of you get a mixed bag of wearing lots of different hats, which I do as well. And that's what I love about you, is it's so relatable. Is we were just talking about earlier that we don't know other women that are 8-wing 7s, and how unique of a call that is on our lives. But I definitely agree, when anyone is called to be a leader and they're going to be in any type of spotlight, it automatically puts their life kind of in the public eye, which means that God has a lot of work to do if they're going to be influencing other people. God's like, wait, before you get up there, you gotta work on this. And so for me, I would say the biggest thing I struggle with is pride. Like, I just totally believe in myself, and I'm like, I can do that. Like, I truly, and this is crazy, and this sounds prideful, and it kind of is, but I truly believe I could do anything that I wanted to do. Like, if I wanted to be an astronaut and just do like whatever track that could take, like, I believe I could do it. So it's
so here's the thing though, is that like being proud of yourself isn't a bad thing. When it turns into like ugly, yuck pride, that's not a great look. But like, I don't think we're not allowed to be proud of ourselves or our capabilities, or that we think that we could be good at things that we would put our hand to.
Love that.
Personally.
I think that I love the quote that says, being selfless is not thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking of ourselves less. And that, I think, has been my journey of not believing I'm the center of the universe and just truly being selfless in the way that I serve first before I get in the line. And true story, I tell people this is my service to them, but in group settings when everyone's like, okay, we prayed, now it's time to eat and go through the buffet line, I'm like, I will be first. Because no one else wants to be first.
Oh, every time. I'm always like, I'll be that guy.
That's amazing. Oh my God. We just probably have so many quirky things in common. It's unbelievable. But no, I have no shame in going first. I'm like, I will fill my plate, and that assures me that I'm not going to get the last of anything, and I'm not going to miss out on anything. So FOMO is a big thing in my life. How about you? How do you feel about FOMO?
That's a very 7 quality of you. I feel like your 7 wing might be stronger than mine as like we talk and get to know each other, because I love missing out. I love not going to stuff. I love not knowing stuff. I don't know why. Like, you see those memes that's like, how old are you? I am canceled plans is the best feeling years old.
That's
like, hilarious. That is, like, so I definitely have a 7 wing in the sense of I love to have fun. I love to have like adventure. I can have a tendency to like jump from thing to thing. I'm an incredible celebrator and encourager, but like the FOMO, like needing to be a part of everything part, I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'll just go to bed.
That's hilarious. I love that. So what is the biggest compliment someone could give you?
That they're proud of me. I think, like, we talked earlier about, like, I'm not a big crier. I think it's an 8 thing, but the fastest way to kind of make tears spring to my eyes is to say, like, I'm super proud of you. That's a really big deal. And then, I mean, everybody likes to hear, like, oh my gosh, have you lost weight? Like, I don't hate that either.
So what are some accomplishments that you feel the most proud of and that others have been the most proud of you for?
I'm really proud of my podcast. It is something that, and I've shared on my show that I prayed about starting my podcast for a year.
Wow.
And got a no every time. It got to a point where I literally just had an alert in my phone to go off on the 14th of every month because I was tired of God telling me no, but I knew I needed to still keep praying about it. And so it is something that is literally so saturated in prayer, and I've labored over. I mean, like podcasting is a lot of work behind the scenes, and I've worked really hard on it, and it is a ministry that I feel super like humbled, but also proud of. And so when people are, I'm so proud of you for talking about hard things. I'm so proud of you for like stepping into this area that other people won't step into, or just like generally, like I'm proud of you for speaking up, or I'm also like, I'm a really good wife and I'm a really good mom. And so that sounds super prideful, but I think if more people started saying that, the world would be a better place. Like if women just started being like, I'm a really good wife, by the way.
Amen. I
like,
love
I'm a
that.
really good mom. Like, so when people, like my parents or, older couples that we have in our life are like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're such a good mom. I'm like, oh, thank you.
That is really sweet. I am a big believer in speaking life over things, and also just self-fulfilling prophecies. I think that if we constantly speak as though something is going to happen, it will. And the book The Alchemist says, like, the universe will conspire to make whatever is in your heart happen. And I put that a little twist on it and basically say, like, God is waiting to make what he has designed us to do happen. And we just have to have faith. We have to believe. We have to be those little kids that just believe in fairy tales or whatever the case may be. We have to dream big because he is dreaming bigger than us. And
Yes.
I love that about our God. And I think that so often people think that Christianity is so boring, but it's the most adventurous life possible. I mean, following Jesus and living counterculturally, those are some serious, things that we get to carry, but it's so full of joy in life. And just, if we are doing it well, it will be attractive to others. We don't have to beat them on the head with a Bible and say, be saved, be saved. How, I don't know if people still do that, but I just pictured this old lady like chasing a little teenage boy down the street. But anyways, it's a fun life. It's an adventurous life. And what I love about the Crappy Christian podcast is how transparent you are. And one of the things that I love about it is that you tell us a little bit about the podcast and how you title them, because I think that it's so comforting in the way that you say, for instance, for when you're battling lies, for when ... And I love that about the podcast, because it's like, oh, these are the things I'm going through right now. Click. And then you listen to it and you're like,
Yes.
wow, I'm not alone. And so tell us a little bit more about your podcast, how it got started, and what's your heart for the show.
Yeah, I mean, you really just did a great job of summing it up. That's exactly why I titled the episodes the way that I did. I almost want it to be like a table of contents. The reason that the podcast is titled the way that it is that while, yes, I want it to reach the middle-aged white suburbanite, because that is me. Like, I love those women. I also want it to like pique the interest of people that maybe wouldn't normally listen to a Christian podcast or a Christian conversationalist podcast. My hope is to reach people who maybe used to go to church but got burned and walked away, or have never gone to church but kind of always had this draw towards God but didn't know what to do with it. My hope is, and like my kind of like life tagline is, meeting people where they are. And so my hope is that by a Christian calling themselves crappy, which is really just catchy and funny, and then also just titling the episodes in a really practical, serving way, that it will connect with people that it maybe wouldn't otherwise. And those are just kind of marketing tools, if that makes sense, to hopefully like reach people. Like I said, we talk about really hard things. I had someone on the show just a couple of weeks ago that lost her husband to cancer, and talking to her about, she was like, and she's only 27. And so talking about, she was like, the last Valentine's Day we had together, like I got pissed about what he got me for Valentine's Day. And like talking through like what the other side of grief has looked like. Like I literally had to take a break to like catch my breath because I was so overwhelmed, so like we're having really difficult conversations. We're also having a lot of fun and laughing a lot, and we talk about the Enneagram a ton because I can't help myself. So yeah, it's just been this really incredible journey that really just got started. I mean, the podcast launched in December, so we've only been around for a couple months, but it's been incredible.
It's so incredible. And it is my new favorite podcast, and I'm so thankful that I found you. And when I did find Blake on Instagram, I messaged her immediately, and I was like, all the things we have in common. 1, I love Jesus too. 2, my little baby girl is going to be named Blakely. 3, I'm an 8-wing 7, and we just connected. And so some of the titles of some of the most recent podcasts are For When You Feel Alone, For When You're Keeping Things in the Dark, For When You Need Rest, and For When You or Someone You Love Adopts. And that was a really powerful episode, by the way. And For When You Need to Mom Up. And so it's just so applicable to our walk with Jesus. And I love that we don't have to be perfect. We can talk about biblical responses to the things that we're facing, because ultimately that is the antidote for what we're facing. However, we can also be real in the process. And I think that you do such a phenomenal job of not just saying, here, go pray about this, or here's some scripture, but you also say, and here's the raw and real and hard and aggravating things about walking a life of faith. And so if you haven't already, grab your phone and go to Crappy Christian Podcast and hit subscribe, and also write her a review because she's phenomenal. So,
oh my gosh, you're so sweet.
So I love your hashtag more heartless, or more heartless, more heart, less hustle. So tell me about being an anti-hustler and what that means to you.
Yeah, so last summer of 18, I hustled myself into stage 4 adrenal fatigue, which is horrible. If you've never, I didn't even know we had adrenals. I was like, what is that? Is that a organ? Like, I don't know. And so I could barely keep my eyes open. Everything was literally like foggy. I have 2 small children, and I had literally never been that exhausted in my life, and ended up requiring some like medical intervention, getting on some medications to get my levels back to a point where I could function. I mean, like when my blood work came back, my doctor literally looked at me and said, I don't know how you're standing up right now. It was terrible. And I had done it to myself. I had hustled myself into the ground. Like I said, I didn't even have the podcast at the time. But I have a graphic design business, and I was taking on way too many clients, and I was trying to do this whole like Instagram thing and writing, and also keeping an immaculate home and cooking the perfect meals and all of these things. But I was doing it completely from a heart of striving and from a heart of hustling. And it was a really, really difficult lesson to learn. But on the other side of that has been this journey over the last, I guess, like almost a year of learning about rest and learning about Sabbath and learning about functioning from those places, learning that if God has something for me, I don't have to work myself to the bone to make it happen. I don't think that discounts hard work. I think that hard work is biblical, but I don't think that hustling is. And that's a potentially controversial statement. And I definitely get some pushback when I talk about it. And a lot of the time I'm like, I think that you're pushing back on this because you're hustling, and it doesn't feel good to like be called on that. And I think sometimes the truth is hard, and I'm like, I'm allowed to say this because I've been there. I've done it. You know, it's not like I'm out here on the outliers being like, you shouldn't do that. I'm literally in it with you. Like, please take a breather, sister, because you're not going to make it much longer. And so I've just kind of tried to start using my platform to like inform and teach and encourage women to fight the good fight and run the race before them, but to do it with Christ as their empowerment and as their source rather than out of their own power. I mean, now I have so much more on my plate than I had last summer. I mean, I added a podcast, I added a ministry, like I have so much more, but I'm not nearly as tired as I was because I am doing it knowing that I don't have to do it out of my own capabilities.
That's phenomenal. And I think that goes without saying, preach, sister. I love that. I have a similar story. Last summer, my baby was 7-8 months, and I was just like ready. I was rearing to go, ready to launch this podcast. I was getting a certification for fitness and teaching moms how to do fitness, and I was serving on a board, and I was staying at home with my little one, and I was like, I've got this. Like, I am doing the Instagram thing, and I think that there's a little bit of once you dive into Instagram and do feel like this calling or connection to be an influencer, which we've both shared that's our heart. I think that there is a switch that flips that says it's all on me to get the interaction that I need to have. And the cool thing that I'm feeling in this season, and hopefully you are too, is that it's actually not up to me, because if Jesus created, fed 5,000 out of a couple of fish and loaves of bread, then why do I think that I'm the one that has to create this influence that he has placed in me, and he's gone before me, and he knows the steps. So yes, I believe in hard work, and I believe in doing quality work. And I think that Christians should care more about doing quality work. There's nothing that is more unsettling than going into like a restaurant ran by Christians and then it's just terrible. That is...
Thank God for Chick-fil-A.
Yes. Amen. Oh my goodness. I relate everything back to Chick-fil-A when it comes to talking about customer service. They
are the pinnacle of customer service. That's why.
Totally.
I will choose Chick-fil-A over a fancy dinner if or like a restaurant with my kids all day, because they basically babysit my kids for me.
It's incredible. We actually did our gender reveal for Blakely at Chick-fil-A. And so I'll have to send you the link. But spoiler alert, we're having a girl. But we went to Chick-fil-A after we got the little envelope. And we went to the cash register. We did our order and we said, we have a favor to ask you. We didn't know this lady. We just said, there's either a boy or a girl in this envelope. And if you could just give us either a strawberry milkshake or a chocolate milkshake. And she started crying on the spot. She was like, I am so honored. And I was like, what? Like, she was like, she had to like hold herself up by her knees. And so it was the sweetest thing. And so she comes over with this milkshake and I'm recording and basically telling people what's going on. And I taste it and I was like, oh my goodness, it's chocolate. We're having another boy. Bubba, you're going to be a big brother to a boy. And then Blake looks at me funny, and Miss Karen, who is the lovely lady that works at Chick-fil-A, is like shaking her head and like her eyes get really big. Like, did I give them the wrong flavor? And then I was like, wait, it's strawberry. We're having a girl. And it was so dramatic and so fun. But they later had me come back and they gave me 2 little cows, one for Blakely, one for Bear. That's my son. And a small fry shirt for Bear, and then a small fry onesie for Blakely, and like
that
some
thermoses
and things like that. So they hooked it up. But basically, if you ever want to celebrate any kind of accomplishment or exciting thing in life, Chick-fil-A is the place to do it, because they will go all out for you. And this is so fun. So back to what we were talking about before. So we've both kind of been through I was a hustler and I'm a recovering hustler, and maybe we'll hustle again. But the cool thing about all of that you were just saying is that we don't, as Christian women, we do not have to do it in our own strength. And that I think is the biggest takeaway from that, is that, maybe we can handle a ton more on our plate when we are truly living in the freedom that God has for us. But when we try to do it in our own strength, then we don't have the time, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the ability, we don't have the patience. Like, He gifts us those things. And so it is so important for us to kind of have that dialogue with Him and constantly be checking our hearts on, are we falling into the world's version of hustling versus hard work that is biblical? So thank you for being a woman who stands up for the anti-hustle movement.
I think that like another sector that literally I just thought of is like personality types like ours that are bold and achievers. If we have that mentality of like, I can do it all and I'm gonna do it all, then like we can end up like gobbling up space that is intended for somebody else.
That's
Like,
so true.
if I'm taking every single opportunity that comes my way and I'm not checking those things with God and with the Spirit and letting Him lead me towards what is mine, I could potentially like take something that somebody else is.
Yep.
And I like super don't want to do that. I'm a big believer in like, there is room at the table. Pull up a chair. I will make you a chair if I have to. But if I have this mentality, then all I'm doing is like multiplying myself and sitting in chairs I don't belong in.
As you're saying that, I'm just thinking of Miley Cyrus. I came in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah, I am a wrecking ball, and or
a bulldozer, but there's not a pop song that goes with bulldozing. So, and I'm a terrible singer, so that is the first time I've ever sang on this show, and probably the last.
I loved it,
but I just had to go there.
Yeah.
So kind of in this transition of you went from hustling to experiencing God's grace. It's on your Instagram, it's the first thing. What does the word grace mean to you?
The word grace means, God, it really equates to freedom for me, and freedom to be who I am in a safe space, freedom for you to be who you are in a safe space. And when we slip into our flesh and we say things we shouldn't or we do things we shouldn't, that I want to be the first person that steps up and extends grace into that situation. I don't want to live by checks and balances like the world does. Like, I don't want to live by tit for tat. I don't want to be holding people accountable for things that they did weeks, months, years ago. Like, I just want us to live in a space where it's okay to not be perfect, to not even put that pressure on ourselves, because you know that the person across from you is going to be okay because I'm okay in Jesus. You're okay in Jesus. So if you mess up, that doesn't say anything about me and my identity. It doesn't say anything about you and your identity. All it says is that you're human and you messed up, and there's grace for that.
I love that. I love that grace is the opposite of pride. I read that in a book once, and as an 8, a prideful 8, it was such a kind of a dagger to the heart to read that pride is the opposite of grace. And so the same is true. Grace is the opposite of pride. And so I just love that grace is saying, I don't have all the answers. I am not perfect, and I'm not the king of the castle. And it's just a humble position to just say, I'm gonna lead with my palms up. In fact, I'm gonna lead by serving others first, and that is something I am so working on. And it's only going to be Christ in me that is able to make that happen. But it's just such a great visual. Bob Goff, he is the one that kind of taught me the palms up thing. He is a lawyer, and he taught his clients to put their palms up when they're being interviewed on the stand. And it just helps them from clenched fists to palms up. It just helps them to be more open and receptive of kind of the situation and what's going on. And so I've loved that. And sometimes I even pray that way instead of praying with my hands together. And there's just something really powerful that happens. So as you were talking, it just reminded me of that. So let's dive into marriage. So when did you get married? And how has your marriage evolved over the years?
Yeah, we will make 7 years of marriage, 8 years of being together this year. And I was a baby when we got married. I was 23 and he was 30. So there's an age gap there. So he was like an adult and I was still like a child, basically. And so what that has looked like has been navigating most of my 20s as a wife and then as a mom. I mean, I had my eldest when I was 25. And so my marriage has evolved significantly. I would definitely say definitely was not the person that I am now. I was so much more, it was this weird dichotomy of like I was insecure but also a wrecking ball. And so that makes for like a really scary wrecking ball. You know, it's one thing when you're a bull in a china shop like for the kingdom. But when you're just like insecure and grappling for security and validation, it's kind of a mess. And so I would definitely say that the beginning of our marriage was a lot of him being on a pedestal and needing him to provide things that he was never meant to provide. And then kind of shifting into, I have generalized anxiety disorder, and it was untreated for the beginning of our marriage. And I definitely think that played a part in kind of my reactions to things and the way that I processed. And so when I was 26, I got into counseling and got on medication. And that honestly has made a giant difference in my marriage and my ability to be a steady companion and a helpmate and to love my husband and my children well. And so, yeah, that's like it's a snapshot of 7 years of growth and growing up. And he'll like see pictures of like when we got married, and it like totally jokingly, he'll be like, I basically raised you. Like,
oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
That's hilarious. How does he support you in your dreams and passions in ministry?
Oh, he does that so well. He picks up the slack for me, which sometimes there's a lot of slack. I'm technically a stay-at-home mom, but I kind of also have like 3 full-time jobs. And so he like in the very like practical, tangible ways, like folds the laundry sometimes and does the dishes. And, you know, when I have nighttime interviews, he puts the girls down. But then he also just like is super encouraging and tells me that he believes in me, and he brags about me to his friends. And I just yesterday thought that I had lost 9 interviews worth of audio, and I was losing my mind. And but also like very much did not expect him to understand that, you know, because like, I mean, he gets it and he gets this world, but like unless you are a podcaster who has done all that work, it's really difficult to understand how devastating of a loss that is.
Totally.
And he literally like called me and was like, take a deep breath. I'm calling my friend that's like a tech whiz. We will figure this out. And if we can't get them back, we will make room for you to redo all of those interviews no matter what it takes. And so he is not perfect. Nobody is, but he is a really great cheerleader and supporter of me in my ministry.
That's phenomenal. I think that it's just so fun to hear stories of women who are excelling in ministry and how supportive their husbands are. I think that the world kind of tells us that, especially in today's day and age, and maybe we'll go down that road or maybe we won't, but we'll see how you react to this. But it is all about, they used to say like behind every man is a strong woman. And I think the same is true, is like behind every strong woman is an incredible man that is cheering her on. And so I think that in today's society, and this is something I feel passionate about, and I'm testing the waters to see how you feel about it. But I have seen a lot of women kind of want to get their achieve on their own and kind of overshadow men or be better than men, or saying being equal to, which of course we were created equal, but we have different roles. And so I, as a Christian woman, am having a hard time with today's lady stuff going on with society versus Christianity. And so I'm trying to navigate the waters of what does it look like to be a Christian woman rather than a hardcore feminist woman. And and I say that really tiptoeingly and
Oh,
because
yeah. Well, first of all, you don't have to tiptoe with me. Second of all, it's hilarious that you say that, because I literally just last night was having a conversation with my husband about that. I wish that we could bring feminism back to its original definition, which is equal rights and equal opportunity, which unfortunately isn't what it is anymore. Like, now it's about trumping men and making them pay for things that they didn't always do, and like trampling them. And then we like wonder why the divorce rate looks the way it does, and we wonder why the family abandonment rate is what it is. And it's because we're like essentially taking the men of our culture out at the knees, and we're not enabling them to be leaders and to lead their family and to love others well. Like, we're not giving them the space or the resources to do those things. And we're like all in on whatever like American culture has defined as feminism. And it bums me out, because like to me, like, everyone should be a feminist, because essentially feminism is what I said in the beginning. It's equality, but it's not that anymore. It's gotten overturned, and it's weird, and it bums me out. And like, I'm totally on the same page as you.
Okay. Oh, sigh of relief. Yeah, my husband calls me a true feminist, because he says, Lexi, you truly believe in women, and I'm pro-life. And so that takes out a ton of feminists are pro-choice. And so that is a whole nother ball game of this whole dynamic. But a couple years ago, when there was the Women's March, we had one here in Chattanooga. And instead of being there, I was pacing my living room back and forth, because I felt so conflicted of, I so strongly believe in women, and I want women, and I try to say encouraged instead of empowered, because I think the word empowered has even been flipped on its head in the way that it has been used in today's society. So I say encouraged intentionally, and it was just so hard for me. I was like, I can't go. And there are women that I love and respect that went, and for amazing reasons. And everyone kind of has their own story with the feminist movement. But I was thinking, as we were talking, I was like, well, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings by talking about this. But the reality is like, hardcore feminists aren't listening to my podcast because they've listened to enough of me to know, like, I am not a feminist first. I am a follower of Jesus first. And that means that all the other questions about how I navigate this system should be answered because I follow Jesus. And he has asked me to do some hard things as a wife. And that sometimes means like laying my life down for my husband. Sometimes it means him laying his life down for me. And it is an equal partnership, but we have different roles and we have different things that we do. One of the best pieces of advice I got when entering marriage was a friend of mine told me, hey, let your husband handle the finances. And that doesn't mean that, hey, if you're a wife and you handle your finances and it's going well, keep going, sister. Like, don't fix what's not broken. But for me, that was just a great piece of advice because I had always done my own personal finances. And my husband is an econ major and he's a finance guy and that's his job. And it's what he takes pride in. So it was actually like a die to self kind of thing to allow him to kind of be that person in our marriage. And so, I don't know, there's just, that could be a whole nother conversation, but I think that true feminism is beautiful, but what it's become is pretty harsh. And
I completely agree.
And I want to see women lifted up in the way that God has called them to. And I guess if I could put words to it, it feels like forced leadership rather than earned leadership. And so I think that even in corporate companies, like they're putting women at the top because they need to hit a woman quota rather than putting women at the top because they earned the position. And I'm not saying that women that are at the top haven't earned it. I'm just saying, like, I'm seeing this trend and I think it's harmful. And I, as a woman, would much rather wait to get any kind of thing passed my way than someone being like, oh, well, she's the token woman in the room, so we might as well let her speak. Like, I don't want to be in that room, you know?
Yeah, no. If I am never the token woman ever, I'll be good.
Yeah. Amen. So, we digress. I digress.
Love it.
Tell us about Magnolia Inc. How did you get started, and what is a piece of advice that you would give to someone starting a business?
Yeah, so Magnolia Inc. is a branding and website design studio. It's been around for a really long time, but it's like just now in the last maybe 2 or 3 years getting my like actual full attention, because I used to also be a wedding planner because I'm a crazy person and I do everything I can get my hands to.
So fun.
So I don't have a graphic design degree. I just have always been artistic and also always really loved computers. And so it actually started when I learned coding back when you built websites with like DreamWorks, which people listening are going to be like, oh, DreamWorks, I forgot about DreamWorks. It was the worst, but it was like originally how you built websites. And so I started doing that in high school, and it just kind of grew and shifted and changed. And I've kind of just taken it with me everywhere I've gone. And so now it kind of like simultaneously gives me the capacity to express my creativity while also empowering other creative entrepreneurs with like the tangible things they need to start a business and kind of launch them off into the world, which is really just like marrying all of my favorite things. So my piece of advice for someone starting a business would be, man, this feels like self-promotion, but genuinely, like, you need a brand. Like, you need an established brand before you're going to be able to build brand recognition, brand loyalty, brand presence, all of these kind of like buzzwords that you're hearing in the entrepreneurial world right now really do start with brand. And so take your time, do your homework, figure out what your brand values are and what your brand message is before you start worrying about logos or typography or colors. Like, figure out like what problem you're solving for people, how you want to do that, what you want people to walk away from experiencing, what you want people to walk away from your business having experienced, and then build on top of that and build a brand that you can be proud of, that you're not going to feel like you need to change in a year, that you can be consistent with, that is easy to work with. And that will kind of like set you up for at least a certain level of success as you're starting out.
That's great. I love it. I am super passionate about seeing women being able to stay home if they want to stay home with their kids, whether that's an online business or if they do what you name it, whatever their thing is. I love seeing women entrepreneurs because my heart, and I don't at all think that if someone wants to work full time when they have kids, I am all for that. Like, you know, your healthy self. And if you are healthiest when you are away for a bit, then go for it. But for me, I've felt really passionate about staying home and being able to figure out what does life look like for me as a stay-at-home mom and someone who has these dreams and desires. So I love that advice. And I love that hopefully people can hear some of these. That's part of the heart for my podcast, is people can hear some of these pieces of advice and think, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. And that is really what I want people to walk away with.
Yes.
So I know that mental health is a part of your story, and it's part of the things that you're passionate about. So tell us a little bit about your heart for it and how you navigate it and how you help others.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder when I was 20, I think. Yeah, it was 20 because I just turned 30 and was like, oh my gosh, I've had like a diagnosed medical disorder for 10 years. So I'm trying to think where to even start. I'm sorry.
Totally fine.
So it started with just having a lot of panic attacks and not really know, like, am I having a heart attack? Like, what is happening? And over the last 10 years, learning about it, going to counsel, like lots of counseling. I take Zoloft every day. I take Xanax when I need it. I also use like natural supplements. I'm a big advocate of like CBD oil, all of that kind of stuff. But especially right now, I'm in a season of kind of trying to facilitate that conversation within Christian culture. I think we have to stop pretending like Christians are immune from mental health struggles. I think we have to stop pretending that stepping into a relationship with Jesus is going to like instantly heal my brain.
Right.
Do I think that God has the capacity? Without a doubt. But I think that he also has the capacity to end every broken thing on like that. And that's just not what's going to happen on this side of heaven. I know that like when I cross over, my body is going to be perfect, and my body is going to produce the amount of serotonin that I need to function as a normal human, and I'm going to be whole and it's going to be beautiful. But like this side of heaven, I need Zoloft. I need like extra sleep. I need a lot of support. And right now, like, I need to, like, talk about it. I need us to have conversations about it. We have got to, like, end the stigma behind medication. I just had a conversation with somebody and was literally explaining to them that, like, if you have anxiety and you're having a panic attack, Xanax doesn't make you feel high. Like, I realize that that's what people are abusing it for, but what it was actually made for is to level out is to balance out your levels and make you feel okay again.
Yeah.
And they like literally didn't know. They were like, oh, like I just assumed if you take a Xanax, you're high. And I was like, no, that's not how any of this works, you know?
Wow.
And so even down to just having like really honest conversations like that of like being a believer who takes medication and goes to therapy, and I know that it's like really refreshing and good for people like to experience that. So, yeah, it's not always easy. It's probably the hardest thing that I have to talk about. And when I do talk about it, I always say I like throw my phone across the room and I'm like, I hate it. I hate talking about it. It makes me feel weird. It makes me feel like extra vulnerable, but it's always like the thing that I get the most, feedback for. People are so thankful. Like, thank you for talking about this. I don't feel so alone in it. And so that's really why I keep doing it, you know?
Yeah, I'm super thankful for that. And thanks for sharing a bit about that. I am in total agreement with you on all that you just shared. I think that so many people think that you can pray away, you name it, anxiety, depression, mental illness, anything like that. And that's just not the case. And it is a great come alongside of whatever the other treatments are, but it's not the only thing. And sometimes it can be. Like, for instance, I have a history of mental illness in my family. And so I didn't know until college, but I had ADD, and I just was constantly praying, like, God, kind of show me what the steps are. And I felt him kind of sharing with me, if you take care of the way that you're eating, I'll take care of the rest. And so I just quit cold turkey. I got off my medication because I was on medication for ADD, which was Vyvanse, similar to Ritalin. And for 3 months, I was off of it. I started failing college classes and just thought, like, I was like, well, God gave me this promise. Like, isn't he gonna, do it all and make it all happen? And I had to get back on the medication. And then it wasn't until a year later that I had a doctor ask me about my diet and just offered this advice about just possibly going grain-free. And so I became gluten-free 5 years ago, and then I was able to get off my medication and be mood swing-free and ADD-free and migraine-free for the most part. And it's just been so freeing, but it was a journey. It wasn't just here's even when God did answer a prayer and I was kind of going out on a limb of faith, it wasn't in his timing, even though he kind of gave me a little bit of the answer a year before I was actually going to know the answer. So, but I think that there are 4 pieces to healing. Some of it is counseling and therapy. Some of it is prayer and community. Some of it is medication. And then some of it is nutrition, and it's it's figuring out the balance of all of those pieces and being willing to have some trial and error and not just lean super heavily on one. And I think the problem with our society is people usually just pick one. So they pick prayer and then they put that on everybody as the only way to handle it. Or they pick nutrition, and I've been this person, and they push that on everyone. And I was like, everyone should be gluten-free, and then we wouldn't have any mental illness in the world. And that was a really silly time in my life 5 years ago. And praise God that I didn't have a podcast at that time. But you know what I'm saying. So I love that you're willing to share about your journey, and that we're, having these tough conversations, because there are women out there that are, have been put in one of those 4 boxes and put all the emphasis on it. And it kind of takes a village. It takes a bunch of different types of treatments to figure out what works best. And so don't feel shame around mental illness. It is something that I think more often than not people are struggling with. And if we can talk about it, just like we talk about hard things like sex, and shameless plug, me and Blake talked about sex on her podcast. So sometime in the next couple of weeks, check it out, and it'll be on there. And I'll put the link below when that goes live. But we want to just be women that talk about hard things. We want to be women that stand for truth, and we stand for grace, and we encourage other women. And so that's why she's been on the show. So Blake, thank you so much for being on the show. The last question is, if you were to run into your 21-year-old self, what would you say to her?
Ooh. Man, I would tell her that when she's 30, she'll still be this wild, but it will be in a way that is so much more fulfilling and Christ-centric, and that if she could start leaning towards that now, it would make her life a whole lot easier.
That's beautiful. Today I was with a friend who's a grandmother. She has kids my age, and her daughter has a daughter. And we went to breakfast with our littles, and she said that she saw her granddaughter as a holy wild. And I did not ever think that that was a combination that could be made. And so that's really neat. So your 30-year-old self is a holy wild, or a holier wild. That's
definitely still wild, but it just manifests a little differently now.
That's really sweet. I love it. I love you. I love your boldness. I love your ability to speak truth. Your podcast is amazing, as I've said over and over. And I'm so pumped that we're friends. So Blake, thank you so much for being on the show. It's just been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. We are literally living out that scene from Step Brothers. Where did we just become best friends? Yes.
Amazing. Well, ladies, you are infinitely valuable. You are created with a unique set of gifts, skills, and talents, created by God for His purpose and His glory. So go and be His hands and feet to this broken world. Get it, girl. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. If this message has encouraged you, then please click to subscribe and share with a friend who may be inspired by the message. Also, if you have an event coming up and you're looking for a speaker, click the link below to get in touch with me.